Дай одни наушники, пожалуйста. Нет, секунду. Нет.
А, переводчики, я понял.
Николай Алексеевич, вы начинаем?
Да.
Добрый вечер, дорогие дамы и господа, уважаемые коллеги. Мы начинаем сегодняшний брифинг, пресс-конференцию. Извиняемся за некоторое опоздание. Мы задержались в организации по запрещению химического оружия. Знаете, Гаага заслуженно пользуется репутацией юридической столицы мира. Но мне думается, что в последние дни, последние недели Гаага стала к тому же химической столицей мира. Это связано с тем, что здесь, в Гааге, находится штаб-квартира Организации по запрещению химического оружия. И в последние недели там проводится одна за другой специальная сессия исполнительного совета нашей организации, идут жаркие дискуссии по различным вопросам, в том числе и по инциденту в Думе 7 апреля. О нем широко писали в прессе. И вот как раз в этой связи мы с нашими сирийскими коллегами и организовали брифинг в штаб-квартире Организации по запрещению химического оружия для того, чтобы еще раз вернуться к тем событиям 7 апреля. Перед тем, как начать пресс-конференцию по ОЗХО, я хотел бы представить других, которые со мной сидят за этим столом. С правой стороны от меня начальник войск радиационно-химической и экологической защиты Российской Федерации генерал-майор Кириллов Игорь Анатольевич. С левой стороны прошу любить и жаловать заместитель постоянного представителя Сирийской Арабской Республики при Организации по запрещению химического оружия доктор Гасан Абей. Рядом с ним наш герой Хасан Дият. Рядом с ним его отец Амар Дият. За столом сегодня сидят граждане Сирии, которые прибыли прямо из дома сюда, в Гаагу, чтобы принять участие и в брифинге, и в пресс-конференции. Я хочу начать, пожалуй, заявление о том, что наше сегодняшнее мероприятие, и брифинг, и пресс-конференция проводятся без какого-либо ущерба для работы, проводимой сейчас экспертами Организации по запрещению химического оружия в Думе. Они уже дважды там побывали, работают по своему графику, знают, какие надо места посещать, проводят необходимые встречи, так называемые интервью. Мы, ко всему прочему, активно призываем технические секретариаты организации и экспертов воспользоваться пребыванием в Сирии для того, чтобы осмотреть выявленные в Думе подпольные химические лаборатории боевиков, террористов, которые используются, как мы предполагаем, для изготовления химических боеприпасов, в том числе и тех, которые использовались для различного рода провокаций.
Are unacceptable in this matter. When, if not now, should we deal with these stockpiles, with these fighters? We should put an end to it right now and forever, to any type of provocation. 7th of April in Duma.
Мы не сомневались с самого начала.
It was a provocation.
Применение химического оружия. Для нас это не было никакой неожиданностью. Мой хороший друг, доктор Гасан Абеевич, сейчас скажет вам сам, бесчисленное количество сирийцев посылали в технический секретариат Организации по запрещению химического оружия, направляли такие же письма в Совет Безопасности ООН, говорили о том, что готовится провокация. Собственно говоря, соответствующее заявление сделал и президент Российской Федерации Владимир Владимирович Путин в ходе пресс-конференции 4 апреля по итогам трехсторонней встречи Россия-Иран в ОЗХО. Для чего мы, сирийцы, говорили об этом? Ясно, что мы хотели, те, кто контролирует оппозицию, должны были воздействовать на них,
To be influenced, to hold them back from reckless action, hold them back from conducting provocations. Unfortunately, this was not the case. What happened on the 7th of April was taken on board by the media in the Western countries. And the idea of using of chemical weapons by the Syrian government against their own nation was being hyped. But for us, it was yet another confirmation of the evil plans of the adversaries of the legitimate government of the Syrian Arab Republic. As it is well known, any case of using of a chemical agent should be reviewed by the specialists, by the relevant specialists of this relevant international organization on the prohibition of the chemical weapons. And the Director General of Technical Secretariat, Ahmed Uzumcu, I have to give it to him. He's an honest and just man. He responded swiftly to our joint démarche. We together with Dr. Abeid went to the Technical Secretariat and urged Director General to immediately dispatch a team of OPCW experts to investigate what has happened in Duma. It would seem that the common sense would...
Эксперты во всем разберутся, посмотрят на месте, пощупают все своими руками. Но США, Великобритания и Франция, не дожидаясь даже начала работы инспекторов, заявили: для них все ясно, вина президента Асада не вызывает сомнений. А заодно были выдвинуты обвинения против России, будто мы попустительствуем самым низменным инстинктам сирийского президента, который, травит газом свой собственный народ. США...
The US, the UK and France imagined themselves to be the guardians of the sacrosanct principles of the international law. However, in reality, they disregard international laws and show disrespect to the OPCW, to our organization. There is no other way to assess their relentless desire to rid of Assad, despite the reports of the incoming inspectors of OPCW to Damascus. There was a special press release on the 14th of April that they were to arrive in the morning to Damascus. A few hours before they arrived, a well-known missile strike was conducted. A few more hours and the specialists of the OPCW would come under fire, would come under American, British, and French missiles. This is a clear case of disrespect of basic norms of international law, aggression against a sovereign state, against Syria, a member nation of the UN, a member of the OPCW. This is disrespect for the OPCW and personally to the Director General of this organization. Though it was under his leadership that this organization has been awarded the high award of Nobel Peace Prize. The French, the British, and the Americans could have cared less. It seemed that the main argument in order to punish the Syrian governments, it seemed that retribution was the main idea, and for that they have distributed a fake footage, distributed by the fake humanitarians of the wild helmets. We have seen it all. We saw the abhorrent scenes of choking children, of choking victims of poisoning. Right after the 7th of April, the grand propaganda machine of the Western trio came to action, of UK, the US, and France. They used the same pattern as a year ago during the similar incident in Khan Shaykhun. You remember that back at that time, permanent representative of the US to the UN, Nikki Haley, was showing to the UN Security Council pictures of little martyrs, this alleged victims of sarin poisoning. These pictures outraged, as it is said, President Donald Trump, and he immediately decreed to conduct a missile strike of 59 cruise missiles against the governmental airbase Shairad. And now it seems that Nikki Haley, according to the materials that we know, I'm talking about the UN Security Council session on the 9th of April, she intended to show photos once again. I believe that that would be printouts of the footage of the White Helmets video. Later, she reconsidered. Maybe there was a subconscious voice inside her head telling her, Nikki, do not trouble trouble until trouble troubles you. So she reconsidered, did not show these pictures. However, that did not hinder the US leadership, the UK, and French leadership to conduct their missile strike. Today, we can prove that the footage of the White Helmets is a crude, staged action. Therefore, the references of our Western partners, as we call them, the references to this footage as the evidence of chemical attack are completely null and void. That was the aim of our briefing today. We have a lot of positive feedback. It was widely received. There were dozens of member countries of Executive Council, as well as observer states and states participants to the CWC. They were asking a lot of questions. However, unfortunately, who was not present in the audience were the representatives of the US, France, the UK, as well as representatives of the EU and NATO countries, and some other Asian allies of the United States. They did not dare to come to the briefing. Probably nothing stings worse than the truth. They're afraid to look the truth in the face. They're afraid to look in the eyes of small Hassan. However, as you know, a certain saying comes to mind that the cat knows whose meat it has eaten. Now they have done all their business, and now they're hiding in the bushes. Now they're sitting quietly in the corner, saying that it has nothing to do with them. However, the people see it all. The truth will out. It's very important to prevent provocations in the future. And they are quite possible because our American partners are threatening once again to use force against sovereign Syria, but we will not allow that. If you would allow me, I would like to give the floor for a short remark to my friend, Dr. Hassan Abeid, and later we'll start the presentation itself. Mr. Abeid, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. I will see if there is translation. شكرا السيد السفير.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Deputy Permanent Representative of the Syrian Mission to the OPCW. My name is Dr. Hassan Obeid. I would like to express my deepest gratitude. I'm glad to see all of you here at this press conference today. I'm grateful to the Russian Federation as well as to the Russian Permanent Mission in The Hague for their assistance in bringing over witnesses from Duma here to The Hague, so that these witnesses could deliver their own accounts to the OPCW, as well as to the OPCW member countries. Well, also very much grateful to His Excellency Ambassador Shulgin personally for his efforts, as well as to the whole staff of the Russian Permanent Mission in The Hague. The briefing that has taken place today has turned out to be very useful in terms of letting the member countries get acquainted with the truth. The truth that the Western countries are loath to hear from people who were in Duma themselves on April the 7th. That is when allegations started to pop out on the alleged use of chemical weapons by the Syrian armed forces. The presence of these young people, as well as the presence of the little Hassan, All of this has demonstrated the hypocrisy and the lies of those countries that participated in the aggression against Syria on April the 14th. Those countries would like to stall the investigation. They do not want the truth to come out. On multiple occasions, Syria has reaffirmed that it has never used chemical weapons and that it has had all of its chemical weapons arsenal eliminated upon acceding to the OPCW back in 2013. All of our chemical arsenal has been eliminated with the knowledge and full assistance of the OPCW by getting it out of the country. All our chemical stockpiles have been eliminated and destroyed under the control of the OPCW specialists. All the accusations mounted against the Syrian government as well as the Syrian armed forces are based purely on false, fabricated allegations made up by the instruments, the proxies of Western countries that would like to sour the reputation of the Syrian armed forces that is fighting against terrorism. It has been enduring this fight for 7 years now. Their information is based upon the reports they claim have come from open sources as well as from terrorist groups they themselves continue to fund, the most important of them being the White Helmets. The White Helmets is a terrorist organization that is funded by the United States of America as well as the United Kingdom. These countries are two principal sponsors of this organization. And the rumors about the alleged use of chemical weapons popped up right away on fabricated videos, with some people from the White Helmets being behind all of this. They are the true criminals. They are the murderers, because they murder children. They prevent these kids from getting the required treatment. The latest video that appeared showing Duma showed them pouring water on the patients, but all of this is a lie. In case of Khan Sheikhoun, these people provided medicine. They administered the medicine right into the heart. Such substances as sarin gas. They once again administered that medicine right into the heart, and that's why the pupils of the children were not dilated by constricted, and they never told those who were affected what medicine exactly they had administered to them. The Syrian mission in The Hague has submitted more than 100 notes since the beginning of this year up until now to the Technical Secretariat of the OPCW, informing in advance that we have some information that some terrorist groups are planning to orchestrate an incident so as to subsequently blame the Syrian armed forces, and that incident, according to our information, was supposed to involve the use of chemical weapons. We provided detailed information with the coordinates, providing the coordinates of the warehouses with the chemical weapons brought by these terrorist organizations. All this notwithstanding, when such incidents do happen, announcements come raining, accusations are leveled directly at the Syrian armed forces. And in the case of Han Sheikhoun in particular, they didn't even wait for the conclusion of the investigation. They launched 59 Tomahawk missiles against the Shumerat airbase of the Syrian armed forces. As for the alleged incident in Douma, they didn't wait either. They didn't even wait for the OPCW investigative team to arrive that was requested by the Syrian authorities. Both Russia and Syria supported this request to the OPCW. Both countries confirmed that they were willing to ensure the safety and security over the OPCW experts if they were to be dispatched to Syria. We requested that the mission should arrive in Douma as soon as possible so as to make sure to see themselves that no chemical weapons had been used. Despite that, the three countries, the US, the UK and France, attacked Syria on April the 14th. They carried out a missile strike, launching more than 100 missiles. They launched these missiles, saying that they were punishing Syria for having used chemical weapons without providing any substantiation or proof or evidence. Yet our heroic anti-air defense forces managed to bring down 71 missiles. Some of the missiles, however, fell down on a research center in Jamraya, and in this center some pharmaceutical research was carried out, and it had nothing to do with weapons or weapon systems. The OPCW inspectors visited this research center twice last year. And in their report, they confirmed twice that this research didn't have any chemical agents prohibited by the CWC, nor did this research center carry out any activity inconsistent with the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons.
لقد تعاونت سوريا وروسيا مباشرة مع
Syria and Russia
لتقصي الحقائق.
engaged directly so as to facilitate the fact-finding mission.
السوري الروسي مثاليا لتأمين سلام
The Russian-Syrian cooperation has turned out to be exemplary in terms of ensuring the safety and security of the OPCW experts. The mission has already visited a number of sites in Duma. It has taken some samples. The members of the mission have met a great number of witnesses.
سيظهر في تقرير هذا الفريق لاحقا خلو
The outcome report of this mission will reveal, as you'll see, that no chemical weapons have been used in this area.
تم العثور أثناء
Furthermore,
تمشيط الجيش السوري لمنطقة دوما بعد خروج
when the armed forces
منها
were combing through
عندما
the Duma area once the terrorists had left it, they found out that when the terrorists had left, they had abandoned a big laboratory as well as a warehouse with chemical weapons. The armed forces found chemical agents and chemical substances prohibited by the CWC. They also found explosives, some rounds, empty rounds that were supposed to be charged with these chemical agents.
ونذكر أيضا أنه قبل شهرين أو ثلاثة من الآن تم
I would also
في عدة
like to point out
مناطق
that 2 months ago,
على
in some areas,
43 برميل كبير من مواد الكلور
we found
في عدة مناطق
43 big containers holding chlorine,
وطلبنا
whole
من
containers
المنظمة
of
أن ترسل الخبراء
that particular
للإشراف
substance.
على نزع
We
هذه
demanded that the
البراكين من
OPCW
الأرض.
should send experts to check these areas and to dispose of these containers holding chlorine.
وذهب الفريق وعاين البراميل التي
The
كان
OPCW team
مطمورا في الأرض
went to the sites. They saw those barrels, those containers that were half buried in the ground.
وكانت المناطق يسيطر عليها المجموعات الإرهابية المسلحة.
These were areas that used to be under the control of armed groups.
وظهر في التقرير بشكل نهائي أن المواد التي تم العثور عليها غير ممنوعة في الاتفاقية وهي كلوريد.
The outcome report stated
وهي صالحة لتنظيف المياه غير أن المنطقة
that
التي
these
وجدت فيها
substance, chlorine, was not exactly prohibited.
لا
It was
يوجد
used
فيها مياه ولا
for
مسابح للتنظيف.
water purification.
والإرهابيون هم من استخدموا هذه البراميل لاتهام
In these
السوري
areas,
بمناطق أخرى.
however, where the containers were found, there were not a single source of water that would require purification. So the armed groups maybe tried to use these barrels with chlorine in order to cast a shadow upon the reputation of the Syrian armed forces.
اليوم نحن تمكنا من خلال الجهود التي بذلتها البعثة الروسية في
Today,
إسرائيل
thanks to the efforts of the Russian permanent mission in The Hague, as well as the Russian government, and the Russian Federation as a whole, as well as thanks to
مع المواطنين الشرفاء السوريين
a genuine
الذين
cooperation
أتوا من سوريا إلى لاهاي
of Syrian citizens who've come to The Hague from Syria.
تمكنا من إظهار
We
الحقيقة
have
أمام عدد كبير من الدول الأطراف
succeeded in demonstrating the truth of what really happened in Syria before a wide audience, at the OPCW in particular.
حيث تحدث كل شاهد لوحده وعلى سجيته وبحرية تامة عن ما شاهده.
Each and every witness presented their account of what they saw during those events on April the 7th.
وجميع الشهادات التي سمعناها أكدت
All the witnesses' accounts that we have heard
عدم وجود أي حادث
confirm
استخدام أسلحة كيميائية يوم
that there is not a trace
السابع
of
من نيسان،
the use of chemical weapons on April the 7th in the town of Duma.
غير أن الدول الغربية التي شنت
However,
العدوان
Western
على
countries
سوريا قاطعت
which
هذا
have launched an
الاجتماع
attack on Syria
لأنها لا
decided
تريد
not to be
أن
present
تسمع
at this
الحقيقة
briefing because they don't want to hear the truth.
وتواجه أقوال هؤلاء الشهود وخاصة أقوال هذا الطفل
They don't want to hear
الذي
the
يتحدث
accounts
بكل عفوية ويقول الحقيقة.
that we heard by the eyewitnesses of the events on the 7th of April. They were afraid of hearing the
إن
truth.
سوريا مستمرة في تعاونها
Syria continues to
وبالتعاون مع الاتحاد
cooperate
الروسي لإظهار كل الحقائق
with the Russian government
لكي لا يكون هناك أي لبس
in order to
حول
show
هذه المسائل
all the facts
وبشكل
about that incident,
يؤكد
so there won't be a shadow of a doubt what has
الجيش
happened there,
السوري من استخدام أي
and to
أسلحة
reiterate
كيميائية.
the innocence of the Syrian army in the incidents with using of chemical weapons. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Abeid. And now we're moving on to the main part of our press conference, and we would like this main conference to be conducted by Major General Kurilov. Please, you have the floor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the 7th of April this year, American non-governmental organization, Syrian American Medical Society, with active support of a number of mass media, has distributed footage about alleged use of chemical weapons against civilians in Ghouta. Authorities of Syria were accused of using chemical weapons. As a main proof, we had mass media footage as well as claims by the so-called humanitarian organization White Helmets. Without waiting for the OPCW specialists to conduct investigation, military group of the US, the UK and France has conducted a massive missile strike on Syria. Russian specialists have conducted detailed analysis in the field of this information, and we'd like to represent the results of this work. During checking the information of peaceful civilians poisoned by chlorine, we saw residential areas where there were alleged victims of poisoning. In 2 apartments, we found 2 gas ballons allegedly dropped by the Syrian army from helicopters. We saw a number of evidence that cast doubt on that version. In the house, where in the basement there were alleged victims, there was an empty gas cylinder on the roof. The part was previously destroyed by air bomb explosion. Part of the roof was missing, as well as part of the frontal wall. Other walls are then traumatically fragments. Please look that the cylinder is not deformed. That cannot happen if it fell down on a concrete roof from 2,000 meters. And the reductor and stabilizing flaps are missing. When we looked at the second apartment, we also got proof that this is staged. As a part of it, we saw that ballistic experts showed that the cylinder
которая исключает версию сброса баллона с летательного аппарата.
Missing roof are so far apart that it could not happen this way. The gas cylinder is almost intact and it's still sealed. That could not happen if it fell down from 2,000 meters. This is the height of helicopters of the Syrian army. On the roof, next to the gap in the ceiling, there is an almost intact tank for water heating. Next to that, we found an flap of tape fragment of missile, and this is probably the reason for the gap. However, we cannot rule out that the beams were beaten down with a crowbar, as it was found in the basement of this apartment. Imagine a 100-kilogram balloon floating down on a small apartment, and you can see that some things remain intact, unshattered, and the very bed, as you can see in the video, is unshattered. It is clear that this gas cylinder has been dragged into the apartment, as you can see by the scratches on the tile. The reductor has not been damaged, simply filed in order to release pressure. We also found gloves for hair dyeing with traces of coloring. When we questioned the host of the apartment, he said that no one was present in that apartment during the shelling, and there are no casualties. The person downstairs breeds chickens, and they successfully survived the so-called chemical attack. Moreover, the freed from the fighters' city of Duma, the specialist of Russian Center for biological chemical protection, found a stockpile of precursors and chemicals supposedly used by the terrorists in producing chemical weapons. We found coal and ethanol, which are both prohibited by the CWC, which can be used for production of mustard gases. Also, there was a tank with chlorine, which was found, which was similar to the one found in the footage, as well as hexamine, which is a stabilizer in producing sarin gas. We cannot rule out that at this facility, the so-called evidence of using chemical weapons by the government have been fabricated here. We'd like to point your attention that there are no casualties, not a single eyewitness who could corroborate the fact of using the chemical weapons. As for the staged footage at the hospital in Duma for treating victims, well, here, in order not to be baseless, the Russian side has provided for you the eyewitnesses of those who were there. We have brought them to The Hague, and now you can learn what really happened in this medical facility. You can hear the first-hand accounts of that. But before that, I would like to say that the Russian side has taken all the measures to preserve the facilities, which will be reviewed by OPCW experts. Center for Reconciliation and Military Police are providing security for these experts. Thank you very much. Thank you, Major General. Well, right now, let's move on to the witness accounts. We see here Syrians, patriots of their country, and I believe it would be quite right if, first of all, would give the floor to the little boy, Hassan Diab. He's only 11 years old. We see him here at the footage of white helmets as a so-called victim of the alleged chemical attack. Now, first, let's ask his father, Omar Diab, to say a few words, and later, if little Hassan would like, he can also say a few words. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Omar Diab. I'm the father of Hassan. I would like to tell you the truth. The mother of Hassan and my children live in the basement. They have heard cries that they should go to the hospital. They went to the hospital. On the street, they saw fires and smoke. They were burning tires. They went to the hospital through the tunnels next to our house. Some people at the hospital, some foreigners, some unknown people, took my son and put him in the emergency unit and started pouring water on them without us allowing them. They were hypothermic. My wife will explain what has happened. She will explain how the children were taken without explanation and her allowing them. After that, we learned that it was fake. So we never saw any poisoning of chemical agents, neither I nor my family. They're all in good health. We were in the basement. We heard cries on the street that we should go to the hospital. We got scared. We went to the hospital through the tunnel. They started pouring water on me at the hospital. I don't know why. After that, they took me to a different place. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hassan, for your account. Now, let's move on in our press conference. So, the next participant of our today's press conference, Khalil Al-Jaish, an emergency physician. Khalil Al-Jaish. Good evening. We have come here to inform the world on what has happened at home and not what was distributed through mass media on the footage that was distributed, which shows the emergency care unit. And I'm also here in this video. And I would like to say that what is shown in the video is not what happened inside. That day, the 7th of April, I was at the emergency care unit. There were patients coming in, and I was receiving them, of the injured. Same very day, at 7 p.m., there were patients with choking symptoms. They were coming in. That was the result of people breathing in dust and smoke, and those were symptoms that had to do with difficulty breathing. There were no other symptoms. All this has happened as a result of a bombardment of neighboring buildings. One of the missiles has been downed on one of the buildings. Therefore, there was dust inside our hospital. There were no good conditions in the shelter above us. Therefore, people were breathing in smoke and dust. So they were choking. We can say that this asphyxiation symptoms were quite mild. We have taken all the measures. We have provided oxygen masks for some. We have taken all the necessary measures according to the symptoms, which was quite routine. We provided them with hydrocortisone according to their symptoms. After that, a person came in who was a member of white helmets, and he started yelling that the chemical weapons were used. Then at the emergency care unit, there were many unknown people who started created atmosphere of chaos. They started pouring water on people. Of course, we did not believe it because we were specialists and we could see that there were no symptoms of chemical weapons poisoning. There were no strange cases. As it was already said, there were no symptoms of using of chemical weapons. All these instances were treated accordingly, and in the next few hours, all people who have been admitted with these asphyxiation symptoms were glad to go home. There were no casualties, no deaths or complications. This is our only emergency care unit in Duma. Thank you very much. Thank you. And the next comment will be done by the resident of Duma, Abdul Rahman Hijazi. Good evening. My name is Abdul Rahman Hijazi. I'm a resident of Duma. I'm a businessman. I do different things. I'm not a member of a medical facility. I'm just a regular worker. I came to the hospital that day because I had a small injury. About 6 or 7 people were there, and around 6 or 7 there were people coming to the hospital. They were saying that they're from the civil defense. They started yelling that there are people who have been poisoned by chemical weapons. I, as a person who has been inside, I saw that people were in a normal state. I did not feel any smell of chemical weapons. All these screams of unknown people created an atmosphere of fear. However, I can confirm that nothing has happened to them. I did not feel any effect of chemical weapons on myself or on any other people. So, after about 2 hours, I left the hospital and went home. My house is about 1 kilometer away from the hospital. I walked on foot. I felt fine. After going home, I felt fine, so nothing happened to me. So, what white helmets were pouring water on people, hosing them down, this is just regular dust as a result of bombardments. No chemical weapons were used. We all saw that there was not chemical attack in Duma. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the next contribution will be done by hospital lab assistant Saeed Das.
السلام عليكم. أنا اسمي سعيد.
Good evening, my name is Saeed Das. I'm a lab assistant at the Duma Hospital Lab. I do blood analysis and I collect blood samples for the injured.
That is a laboratory both for the surgery unit and for the emergency care unit. It all started on Friday. There were many patients, many injured as a result of bombing. We were working at the hospital on Saturday included, on that day of April the 7th. I was sitting in my lab, I was taking blood from the donors, and then I was bringing it into the surgery unit as well as to the emergency care unit. I was in my lab and I heard someone screaming in the emergency care unit, someone screaming, "Chemical weapons, chemical weapons." So I took the remaining blood vials, or the blood of the donors, and I left the laboratory in order to check out what was happening. And I found out that all the floor was covered with water, and the situation was verging near on anarchy, on chaos. I felt and smelled dust in the air. The dust, the smoke, it all entered the hospital from the street. It was the result of a bombing. I asked the doctors who were in the emergency care unit what was happening, and they responded to me saying that nothing was happening. They said people are simply scared. They said chaos was created because people from the shelter on the upper floors started to get downstairs to the hospital. Besides, there were people outside the hospital. They were also scared and they tried to get inside, to get to the shelter. Many of them were also saying, "Chemical weapons, chemical weapons." In other words, those people inside the hospital, they were pouring water on the presumed victims of an attack. We were inside, we saw everything. We didn't put on any masks, we didn't smell any chemical agent, we didn't see any chemical weapons influence. If it had been some chemical weapons, then we would have felt it, we would have been affected too, but we were not. Thank you. Thank you. According to our list, our next speaker is a nurse from the hospital. His name is Muafak Al-Nisreen. Good evening. My name is Muafak Al-Nisreen. I'm a nurse at the emergency care unit at the Duma hospital. I was at the hospital on April the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. I was at the emergency care unit. I was there on Saturday on April the 7th too. We were receiving the injured, those who were wounded during the bombing. There were different kinds of wounds and injuries. Around 7 o'clock in the evening, we received a number of people with the symptoms of asphyxiation. They took in some dust and smoke, and that was the reason for the asphyxiation. Some people who got down from the shelter. We did everything as the procedure prescribes in order to improve their state. As you could have noticed on the video, you saw some parts of the hospital, you saw people enter, people who screamed chemical weapons, and because of what they were crying out, people got scared and chaos broke out, anarchy broke out. One person brought in a small girl into the hospital. We made a check-up and we didn't find anything. We made sure that she had not been affected by chemical weapons. There were no symptoms, no signs of the chemical weapons influence. I was also at the hospital on April the 8th, and we didn't see any consequences of that alleged incident. I would also like to give the floor to someone who didn't participate in these fake videos of the white helmets. It is a person who works at the hospital. His name is Sadel Abdelnajid. He was at a different room and he saw everything from outside. Good evening. My name is Yasir Abdelmajid. I am a surgeon. I work at the Dimashkar hospital. On April the 7th, I was at the hospital, started from 7:30 in the morning. I was at the surgery unit during the whole day. During the whole day, we were receiving people with different injuries and wounds, accounted for by the military clashes that were carried out that day in the town of Duma. I'd like to say that around 7 or 7:15 in the evening, a person came to the surgery unit. He had a little girl with him. She was around 18 to 24 months old. I was told she was brought in an ambulance to the surgery, that a surgeon consult was required. I was also told that this girl had been affected by some chemical agent. When the girl came in an ambulance, was all moist and wet, the body temperature was very low, and her tummy was swollen. I examined her. As a general surgeon, and on my side there was nothing wrong. She was healthy in terms of surgeon, but I was somewhat taken aback because I had been told that she had been affected by a chemical agent, and I proceeded to do a full examination. I asked her if she really had been affected by a chemical agent or not. When I examined her, I didn't find any symptoms, any signs that would be a telltale sign of the chemical weapons use. Her general state was good. She didn't have any symptoms that would confirm that she'd been affected. As I said, her clothes were wet and her body temperature was very low. I helped them dry the clothes up. I wrapped her in a blanket. And when I made sure that her overall state was good, there were no injuries, there was nothing that would be a source of concern, I got her back to the emergency care unit, and I spent the rest of my duty time in surgery, operating on those who continued to come into hospital. And as I said this, I was told the girl had been affected by a chemical agent. But when I examined her, I didn't see any signs of poisoning. She was perfectly healthy in that regard. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is not the end of the list of our speakers. I would like to give the mic to Ahmad Hashov, who worked at the hospital at the emergency care unit. Ahmad Kashoy, the floor is yours, sir.
He went outside. Mumtaz Al-Hanash, medical surgeon.
Вот мне подсказывают, что Ахмад Хашой
Well, they're telling me that Ahmad Ashoy has left the room for a couple of minutes. So, while we're waiting for him, we're going to give the floor to Mumtaz Al-Hanash, who is also a nurse at the hospital.
Assalamu alaikum.
Good evening, my name is Mumtaz Nash. I'm a surgeon, and I specialize in bone surgeries. Back on the day of the incident, I was working at the surgery unit. I'd like to draw your attention to two important facts. First, the work of a doctor was very difficult in the hospital because we had a death of staff 2 days before. On April the 5th, 6th, a humanitarian corridor had been opened up and many doctors left through that corridor, and that is why we were running low on staff. We didn't have enough people, and many people had to work 3 days in a row, 24/7, without any rest. So it's a very complicated, very difficult state. The great number of people were flocking into the hospital asking for help, and all of that resulted in the services provided not at the proper level. But then volunteers came into the hospital. They were ill-prepared. They didn't work there as qualified medical personnel, of course. And you can see many of them on the video. All these volunteers are working somewhat haphazardly, not as real doctors are supposed to. And then a person appeared who alleged that chemical weapons had been used. Panic broke out, chaos broke out in the emergency care unit. And people started to sort of treat themselves without coordinating with the medical staff who were at the emergency care unit. As for the surgery unit, yes, we do have a specially designated surgery unit, and we had people coming on from intensive care unit, one that we operated, and I like to say that around 7 in the evening, some people came to the surgery unit. These people were from the building that collapsed, it was bombed. They had some signs of asphyxiation, they had trouble breathing, and they were coughing. But once we examined them, we didn't see any signs that would lead us to believe that they had been affected by a chemical agent. They had trouble breathing and they were coughing because of the dust from the building that collapsed nearby. Thank you. Right now I'd like to give the mic to Ahmad Al-Saur. Is a male nurse from the emergency care unit from the Syrian Red Crescent. Good evening. My name is Ahmad Saur. I work at the Red Crescent Center in Duma. The Red Crescent Center only receives people for emergency care. We provide first aid. Right now, the ambulance services of the Red Crescents are suspended, and the same was the case on the 6th and the 7th of April because of the military operation that was carried out back then. I was at the center on these days. We were receiving patients on these days, as I said. And as I said, on these days, we didn't register any incidents of poisoning by chemicals. Everyone who applied for our help did so either in order to get some chemicals, medicines I mean, or to get treated because they were injured with some missile fragments. As my colleagues have already explained, not a single person whom we received showed signs of being poisoned by a chemical agent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. As I can see, Ahmad Kashoy has got back. He's an administrator from the emergency care unit. Good evening. My name is Ahmed Kashoy. I'm in charge of logistics at the Duma hospital. I would like to tell you about what happened on April the 7th, 2018, around 7 in the evening. Well, by that time, I had lived around 1 month at the hospital, so around 7 p.m. I was next to the entrance to the emergency care unit, and I saw a person come in with a child. He entered and started screaming, "Chemical weapons, chemical weapons." All that day we had been receiving people with injuries from the hostilities, the military clashes. But once that person entered and started screaming, hell broke loose at the emergency care unit, at the hospital. People got scared, they got frightened, they panicked. Honestly, there were injuries. Some people had trouble breathing. But these people like that, we had been receiving them at the hospital for the whole day. We saw that this scream, chemical weapons, was only used as an instrument to sow panic. The Duma hospital is a large fortified building. It is fortified with some mounds of ground, earth. At the lower floor there are many families who've come into this hospital as a shelter. They have fled the military action in the town. When these people heard someone screaming chemical weapons, they only got even more frightened, even more scared. The hospital back then had around 1,500 people. Many people there, we didn't know them. They were making some footage. They were making footage of the chaos that broke out. They were also taking pictures and videos of people being poured water on from a hose that primarily and originally was used to clean the floor. It all lasted for around an hour. We treated the patients and we released them home once they were treated, and there were no deaths on that day. Nor were there any incidents of persons affected by chemical agents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last contribution, coming from our Syrian patriots, Dr. Hassan Oyun, doctor.
السلام عليكم. شكرا جزيلا على
Hello. Thank you for your hospitality. My name is Hassan Ayun. I'm a doctor at the emergency unit. I was on duty on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of April this year. I'm a doctor in emergency care starting with 2013 at a specialized hospital of Damascus province. I would like to say what Dr. Mutaz has already said, that before the incident, in a few days before, a lot of qualified staff have left us, and we had to substitute them with unqualified, inexperienced staff, with our volunteers, but we could not rely on them. In many cases, doing medical work. Over the past 3 years, people in Duma have been using plastic and tires as a fuel to keep warm and to cook food. I was a doctor on duty at the emergency care on Friday, on the 6th of April, as well as on the 7th and 8th of April. My duty hours were supposed to be over on the 7th in the morning. However, there was no doctor on duty to substitute me, so I had to continue working. On Friday, around 4 p.m., we were receiving injured people because of the military operation in Duma. The injured were continued to be admitted into the night. The next day, 7th of April, 2018, around 7 p.m., about 15 or 20 people were admitted to the hospital with simple trouble breathing of mild or medium degree. Otherwise, they had no symptoms which would point at using chemical weapons. So they did not have constricted pupils. There were no symptoms in the ribs or in the lungs. They had a mild degree trouble breathing. They were treated at the emergency care. In a few hours, they were released. So we did not send any injured, any children or adults for deeper checkups, for any other analysis, and there were no deaths this day. The doctor on duty that day, he was fine. He also had no trouble breathing, no symptoms in trouble breathing. Thank you very much. This is the evidence that I wanted to give you. Today, the state participant of the CWC and current member of the Executive Council of the OPCW, the state with the observer state status, right now during the press conference has showed the world that there is convincing proof that this was the provocation conducted in Duma on the 7th of April by white helmets. These pseudo-humanitarians being financed through the taxpayers of the UK and the US, first and foremost. Please notice that, contrary to our Western partners, our American partners, well, British as well, who are used to throwing words around and making baseless accusations based on some absurd contemplations, constructs, referencing mass media and some imaginary characters. Today, you, as well as members of OPCW, have seen eyewitnesses, little Hassan, medical workers, people who have been videotaped at this footage, people who could really tell us what has happened. Indeed, today we have caught the libel red-handed. We have caught those who were trying to deceive the world community. However, this is not a reason for joy or schadenfreude that we have caught them red-handed, because the situation is far too serious. We're all concerned by what is happening in the world. Look, we, Russia, is constantly accused of distributing fake news, accused of conducting the so-called information wars. However, I believe that after today's briefing and after this press conference, no one would have even a shadow of a doubt who in reality distributes fake news and who is waging an information war. The video footage concocted by the pet projects of the Americans, the so-called white helmets, this is false footage, fake footage. It has far-reaching ramifications. It seems that for the first time since the beginning of the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, the world has come to a dangerous brink where there is the threat of direct military confrontation between the US and Russia lurking behind. It seems that right now the danger is off. The situation is coming down somehow. However, the reason to sit back is not here. We still hear some threats to use force, to use arms against the sovereign state of Syrian Arab Republic. And that means that the threat of a powerful conflict is still in place. Well, honestly, I have a really bad association. I have a feeling of a pre-storm atmosphere. This is an abhorrent fake, a provocation of the situation in Duma on the 7th of April. This brings back the notorious episode of the so-called Glavitz provocation in 1939. The Nazis staged Poland attacking a radio station at a border region in Germany. An SS operation was conducted called Preserves. They staged an attack on a radio station. When leaving, the SS troops have left corpses of people in Polish military uniform. They were the prisoners of death camps killed by the SS troops to conduct this provocation. And you well know how it all played out. That was the casus belli for the Nazi Germany. That was the beginning of the Second World War. Right now, I really want to say, turn back on this dangerous path. Stop taking this course of confrontation. We should not allow for the Cold War, the remake of which we are seeing right now, to turn into a hot war. We have to draw the right conclusions to refuse the military confrontation strategy and to look for a solution of the existing issues with mutual respect and considering each other's legitimate interests. We sincerely hope that the ancient land of Syria will have the peace returned, and the Syrian nation, which has been through so much, can reap the fruit of peaceful existence. As for Russia, it is doing everything in its power to facilitate political settlement in Syria. And the proof for that is the successful Sochi Congress for Syrian National Dialogue. We'll continue to do everything in our power for a comprehensive, inclusive political dialogue, and for it, in order to bring reconciliation and for normal life to return to Syria. I would like to hope that the years will pass, and little Hassan, who you see here today, will grow up, will become an adult, a decent son of Syria. He will choose his own path, his walk of life. He will be a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, or maybe a diplomat, an outstanding Syrian diplomat who will be decently representing his country at the world arena. In other words, we have to do everything possible to bring the situation back to normal, to facilitate peaceful settlement in Syria, and to release tensions in the world. On that depends our future, the future of our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much. Right now, we are prepared to take your questions.
Rupert Evelyn from ITV News. A question first for our Syrian visitors. How threatened do you have to feel to change your story and to deny a chemical weapons attack? And a question for you, Ambassador. How low do you have to go to bring a little child all the way here and threaten them?
First to start, because the question is about threatening them, and they allegedly changed their...
You want them to speak?
No, you can speak.
Doctor will speak on their behalf.
So, на этот вопрос, на первый...
For the first part of this question, the doctor will respond to that.
First half, السؤال إنه خلاص راح يجاوب عنك هذا السؤال.
لا بصراحة أنا ما سؤالك.
Honestly, you have a very remarkable question. But we have come here today not because we're pressured by someone. On the other hand, completely otherwise, we came completely freely from the Red Crescent We came here through our own will. No one pressured us into doing anything, and we are telling the truth, honest truth. What has happened to us? No one told us what to say and what not to say. We came here today to tell you what we believe is important, what happened to us. Thank you very much. Well, on my behalf, I would like to add one important thing. There was a session of the Executive Council. It was called by the Western states. Well, not formally them, but through their pressure, it was dedicated to this incident of using of chemical weapons in Syria. We were debating a lot. We heard reports by the representatives of your country, of Great Britain, of the US. They were promoting their point of view, and we were rebutting that with our arguments. Unfortunately, I had a feeling that our colleagues from the Western group simply did not want to hear us. Right after the American intervention, the microphone was taken by the states from the European Union, from the NATO countries, some Asian allies of the US. All of them were doing that by rote. It seemed that they were reading off one piece of paper. It was a telltale sign. There was no national couleur nationale in that. They were all glorifying the American action of retaliation. They were saying that this is it makes sense, that it was a targeted strike, a proportional response. Any arguments that we're trying to provide, this is a blatant violation of the law. It makes no sense, no logic. No logic in what they were saying. All these arguments were refuted. Highbrow expression. And this very simple argument. The OPCW has been engaged. Ahmed Uzumcu has dispatched his team. They're great specialists. Allow them to work. How can you say that you have irrefutable proof? They show us the mass media footage, the white helmets footage, dying children. We're telling them this is not truth, that we know that it's not true. They haughtily disagree. They don't want to talk to us. It comes to that they're saying it's all fake, misinformation. We said that if you don't understand the normal language, well, then let's talk in a different way. If all our serious arguments are not getting across to you, we'll bring you the eyewitnesses, the live eyewitnesses. Ask British colleagues who were present at the session of the Executive Council. They would say that, yes, indeed, I say that, yes, Lil Hassan, it's hard for him to come out here. I agree. And the flights take its toll. But Little Hassan is an eyewitness today, an extremely important witness. He's proving an innocent child, and he's telling the truth. You do know that out of the baby's mouth comes the truth. And today, the truth that you don't want to hear, well, not you specifically, but our Western colleagues, this was a forced measure, but we had to show that this is a lie, and a very dangerous one to boot. I have already explained why. Our colleagues at the Executive Council were refusing to make very simple decisions. We, together with Dr. Abeid, were trying to get the documents through just in order to support the mission dispatched by the Director General to Syria. This fact-finding mission, they even didn't want to support that. This document was not adopted. They don't want to understand the situation is complicated. There is a threat of military confrontation. Well, I have already given you an example of Gravitsky incident with a provocation. But right now, the world is in a very different place. We have nuclear weapons, and God forbid if there is any confrontation. We're saying Russia is doing the saber rattling and conducting an aggressive policy. Russia, like no other country, knows the price of a war. In Russia, everyone says, God forbid there is a war. The Soviet Union has lost 27 million people's lives. We care about peace. We want peace to our Syrian colleagues and friends. We want just one thing, for the peace to come back, for the Syrian nation, for small Hassan to go back to school normally, to study.
That is the goal we pursue, but there are other countries apparently that don't want that to happen. And that is very sad. But let's hope that common sense will prevail.
Another question.
Hi, Stephanie Vandenberg from Reuters News Agency. The doctor who just spoke on behalf of the Syrian eyewitnesses, could he first please repeat his name and maybe tell me what is going to happen with the eyewitnesses now? What do you expect? Will you go home? Will you stay here? Will you testify more? What's going to happen next for you? Thank you.
Who will ask the question? She asked for the name of the doctor who spoke. The name of the doctor who spoke? Many doctors. Which one? She wants his name.
أنا اسمي أحمد قشوع. أنا مالي طبيب. أنا مسؤول عن الأمور الإدارية. أنا اسمي أحمد قشوع.
My name is Ahmad Hashor. I'm in charge of the logistics at the hospital. I'm not a doctor.
Where we'll go now? What would be the next step?
The question is, what will happen now to these eyewitnesses who came here? He said, we came by the Red Crescent, we came of our own free will. My question is, they were brought now to Europe to testify. Will they stay here? Are they going back to Syria? Are they going back to work in Duma? What's going to happen to them?
رح نرجع على بيوتنا.
We're going back to Russia. My name is Hassan Ayud. I'm going to get back to Duma, to the city, to the town of Duma. We're going to get back to our normal life. I do hope that we're going to get back and there are going to be no problems. Indeed, the situation there has improved better, and we are among those people who live in Duma right now.
Вы удовлетворены ответом?
Are you satisfied with the answer?
Ima Bakal from NOS. I'm going to ask the question in Arabic. They can translate it, that will be easier. السؤال الأول للسيد والد الطفل حسن. ذكر هو في منتصف النفق تم إيقافه من قبل سيارة بيضاء.
The child said that he was opposite a white car. Who did this white car belong to? What organization?
لأن السؤال It's Hassan's father.
Not in the room. You have another question?
Okay, okay. Because he said, okay, قال سيارة بيضاء. بعدين ابنه حسن أثناء كلامه قال تم إيقافنا من قبل.
Well, Hassan, the little boy, said that they were standing in front of a white car that belonged to the Red Crescent. Mr. Saul has said that the Red Crescent was not working on April the 6th and the 7th. So my question is only natural. Who did this white car belong to? What organization did it belong to?
حكى الطفل هو طفل. أي شعار لونه أحمر عليه هلال اسمه الهلال الأحمر. فمنظومة الإسعاف اللي بيستخدمها الخوذ البيضاء بكل المناطق عليها شعار هلال أحمر. فيبدو هذا اللبس الموجود عند الطفل.
Well, all these white cars which we have the signs of the Red Crescent. The cars of the Red Crescent were on technical maintenance, and we have an official statement which was published.
صحيح صحيح لذلك يفضل نسأله بظن موجود هو معنا موجود بالقاعة لكن هو خارجا.
Well, I'm here, but he's not in the room right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Ambassador Shulgin.
Yes.
Anna Holligan, BBC News. I just wanted to know why you thought it was more important to put these possibly valuable and vulnerable witnesses in front of the media before allowing the OPCW investigators to speak to them, as the OPCW had requested.
Как я уже сказал,
as I mentioned previously, Russia and Syria, right after what happened in Duma on April the 7th, together made a submission to the Technical Secretariat without any delay, asking the organization to send the OPCW experts to investigate the incident. We did everything in our power for them to arrive in Syria as soon as possible. We had to sort out the issues of safety and security. It was not all that easy. The Russian military police is taking active part in providing the safety and security. And so far the experts have visited twice. They are working through the list. They've got a special list of sites they are supposed to visit, as I mentioned previously. But apart from that, I would like the journalists who are present here to heed that. Please write that down in your reports. There was a statement that in Duma, a clandestine chemical laboratory and a warehouse with chemical agents were found. There are chemical agents prohibited under the CWC, and we got to look into that to find out what was happening in that lab, in that warehouse. And there was even a cylinder, the same as we saw in Ghouta. Who else but the OPCW experts who are there right now are the best position to look into that? And we call upon the Technical Secretariat to deal with that matter. Now, as for taking away these important witnesses away from the country, as if the OPCW found itself without the people it needs to interview. But that is not exactly the case. It is a version propagated by some Western countries. I'm not going to name the country. Yesterday there was a letter asking why the Russians and the Syrians organized this briefing, why they brought these important witnesses here. The letter states that these people, the eyewitnesses, first and foremost have to provide their accounts to the OPCW experts. But I've got to tell you that out of the Syrian witnesses who you've seen today, there are six people, please write that down, have already been interviewed by the OPCW Technical Secretariat experts. The rest are also willing to provide their accounts, but the OPCW experts have their own mind about who they should talk to. They have chosen 6 people and they've interviewed them. They said they're satisfied with their accounts and they've got no further questions. So the people were free to go. The OPCW mission was no longer interested in these eyewitnesses and they could easily fly in here to participate in this important event. Thank you.
NOS, you mentioned in the Russian press release. Kisha Hexa, NOS ambassador, you mentioned in the Russian press release that somebody here was going to be present who was a witness of producing the video of the white helmets, and I was wondering where this witness is and if he can tell his testimony.
Слушайте, ну, по-моему, все эти выступления...
Well, I think all the accounts that you've heard today are a testimony how this fake video was made by the white helmets. Maybe I've missed something, but some of our Syrian witnesses have said that there were those white helmets, people in white helmets, who entered the hospital, grabbed the hoses and started to pour water on people. Isn't that a confirmation that the white helmets are responsible for that? Maybe the Syrians are going to add something.
That somebody who was present in making the video would testify today. It's a different.
Я не знаю, по-моему, исчерпывающее представление даны.
I think the exhaustive account has been provided to you. All this provocation from beginning to end was orchestrated by the white helmets. Did you see little Hassan? You saw they put some medicine into his mouth.
Знаете, вы должны либо верить, либо...
You know, you can either believe it or you can choose not to believe it. You can see living people and they tell you that they were lured into the hospital, they were covered in dust, and someone started to just ask them, the white helmets tried to convince them.
Are not or are trustworthy. It's just that you promised.
Mic to the speaker, please.
Here today, and I'm just asking where did this person.
Сейчас вот ответит один из сирийских представителей. Пожалуйста.
One of the Syrian witnesses is going to respond to you. Those people. Those people who made the video, we don't know them. White helmets were working with some other people, and we are convinced that the white helmets were responsible for that fake video. I saw 3 people who were passing down their mobile phones from one to another, and they were making footage.
طبعا هو مش موجود لانه المصور اكيد انه موجود.
كان وعدنا انه يكون موجود في المؤتمر، صح، ولهذا السبب نحن هنا.
طيب هو إرهابي شلون بده يجي لهون؟
He's a terrorist, how can you come here?
I would like to ask the visitors from Syria, do every single one of you not trust the white helmets? The rest of the world, or much of the rest of the world, sees them as conducting legitimate operations. Can I ask you all, do you not trust the white helmets? And Ambassador, if I may ask you, what do you say to those, including the UK today, who say that this exercise is merely a stunt? And I wondered if I could ask you to answer a question in English, because I know your English is very good indeed.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me just clarify this issue. The White Helmet is a terrorist organization working in Syria, financed by US and UK, and they are in Syria to implement the agenda of the United States of America and the United Kingdom, and they are not in helping or in offering any medical help or any medical emergency like you think they were doing. In contrary, and they have there is a wide testimony by doctors from inside Syria and from outside Syria, from abroad of Syria, and there is a medical organization of medical doctor of Sweden who testify that all the treatment done by White Helmet in the incident of Khan Sheikhoun was contrary to the normal procedure and against the treatment, the normal treatment, and they were killing the kids and the children, and they are not helping them because the kids were not facing any sarin or any chemical weapon, and they tried to inject in them and inject in their heart that injection. So you can return to the publication of that testimony, and other doctors also said that.
I just wanted to establish whether all of the independent and disparate Syrian visitors who are here, whether they all share that view.
Absolutely.
Of the white. Can I ask you? You share
Yes.
that view?
I think you heard them one by one, and you can hear them again. We can give them the floor to testify if they trust White Helmet or if they consider White Helmet as terrorist organization.
Сейчас слово возьмет.
Right now, I'm going to give the floor to Major General Igor Anatolievich, and afterwards, I'm going to try to say a couple of words to you and to tell you whether we trust the White Helmets or not, and you'll see why we cannot trust them under any circumstances. I would like to tell you why mistrust was born with regard to the White Helmets. Just remember the photos from Khan Sheikhoun when the White Helmets were making footage standing right next to the site where allegedly sarin had been used. They had no chemical protection equipment. I'm a chemist, and I know that at the distance they were standing in, if the concentration was really just like the one cited by the UK, no one could have survived. The photos you can also see from Khan Sheikhoun show the same people on all the photos. You know, the money paid by the British taxpayers. And we know that the White Helmets founder is an officer of the UK intelligence. Should ask why these intelligence services are doing their work in such a bad manner, so incompetently. I'm also going to say a couple of words about the White Helmets. Can you hear me? No, there are people who don't understand English. I'm going to speak in Russian. Dr. Hassan Obidi has already told you everything As for Sheikhoun, we know from the very beginning that it was a provocation. We asked questions, but the technical secretariat of the OPCW told us, wait for a special briefing, you will get all the answers. And last year we had a briefing to your compatriots, as we call them, two British lines, Phillips and Wallis, were the ones who moderated this briefing. And I started asking questions. And one of the questions was just like that. It was also mentioned by Dr. Abid. No fewer than 10 photos show little children. We can see that they are scared. Their pupils are dilated, very much so. And as every chemist understands, one of the consequences of sarin use is the pupil constriction. Pupil can be constricted to a single pinpoint. And I was asking the British moderators whether they could account for that, account for the dilated pupils on the photos. Two British specialists, very prominent specialists, got confused and they couldn't tell me a clear answer. And at a certain point, seeing them in such a state, a good friend of mine decided to give them a helping hand. He told them, gentlemen, maybe you have forgotten that the white helmets gave some special eye drops to these children, atropine. And the British experts said, no, certainly that was not atropine. Very well, I continued. Why then, in the technical expertise report, all these facts are not reflected? On page 36, there was a table enumerating and enlisting all the consequences such as diarrhea, headache, vomiting, and yet there was not a single person on that table with dilated pupils. We saw all those photos. Nikki Haley showed all those photos, but they couldn't account for that. They couldn't answer my questions. And then your compatriots, do you know what they told me? They told me that they didn't view these photos as important pieces of evidence. Just wait a little bit. You don't see the photos of the white helmets as important pieces of evidence? The same photos were shown to President Trump, and based on these photos, he made the decision to carry out missile strikes. And afterwards, when at one of the Executive Council sessions we wanted to show the photos, a representative, Mikhail Ulyanov, came and he asked for the permission to show photos of the white helmets, not our photos, but the very same photos that Nikki Haley had shown. Do you know what terrible reaction the American ambassador expressed? He said that it was a violation of a procedure. He said he would do everything to prevent these photos from being shown. But why am I telling all of this to you?
I'd like to say that today we have exposed the provocation in Duma. I'm positive that the time will come will reveal that Han Shi-kun was also a provocation. Just like when we found little Hassan, we'll find little Nadmir who will tell everything, how it all went down. And we'll try to shame our partners. I don't know whether they still have some conscience left for that. But I'll repeat that we're not doing that out of a competitive spirit. We don't want to do this Schadenfreude act. We want the situation to go back to normal. We want to stop acting like our partners are doing right now, in a cheeky way, without hearing anyone. So I'm being told that our Syrian delegation must be taking off right now. They're going back today. So our last question, and we'll finish with that.
Just a question surrounding young Hassan. Given his age, and he is very young, how did you come to the conclusion that he would be able to face an international media, to be able to face a journey and recount a trauma? And secondly, are all of the Syrians present here, will they be returning to Syria immediately after this?
Well, the first thing, Lil Hassan is here with his family, with his father and mother. He feels fine. Well, as you know, your question about his trip is a stress and it's taking its toll. Well, have you thought about the psychological stress and the burden that little Hassan has experienced when adult men has grabbed him and started pouring ice-cold water on him? Have you seen poor Hassan, who was shivering from cold and trying to understand what to do, and something poured in his mouth? Have you thought that little Hassan could have been rather upset? Why are you asking these questions about this moral trauma right now? Why are you not asking these questions to the white helmets, who are basically torturing children? We cannot rule out that the children who they poisoned in Khan Shaykhun, that these children survived. And there will come a time when they will be taken into account. And the Syrian people who have come here, they're Syrian patriots. They have shown their spirit and they have shown the truth, who is a liar and who is the guardian of the international law.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Before closing this conference, I wish to thank all present here, and I wish to thank especially Russian Federation and the mission of the Russian Federation in The Hague for organizing all this event, and for the briefing, and for bringing all our Syrian patriots here to deliver their testimony, their genuine testimony, and they are completely free to deliver in their way all what they face and what they saw and what they lived in that day of the presumed alleged fabricated attack in Duma on the 7th. And we assure you that Syria wanted all the truth, nothing but the truth, and we want to make that truth known to everybody, whether some countries like or doesn't like. This is not our matter, this is not our importance. We have to show the truth to the international community that Syria is innocent, the Syrian army is innocent and is combating the terrorism in Syria, and will continue combating terrorism until liberating all Syria from it, and until installing the peace in all Syria. Syria wants the peace and wants to cooperate with the OPCW, and the OPCW team is working, continue to work, and they have met with the witnesses here, and we are not duplicating any work. We are doing our way to help the international community, the international media, to know the truth. If you are not able to go to Syria, we brought Syria for you here, and we thank Russian Federation for that. And for the other allegation and accusation, wait and you will see more, and you will be surprised, because when the team of the OPCW will visit the storage where chemicals has been found left over by terrorist groups in Duma. We found chemicals from Germany, we found chemicals from UK, and from Porton Down Laboratory from Salisbury, not from anywhere else, from Salisbury. And you know Salisbury, how was important these days. So all the accusation on all the false allegation are to be completely unveiled, and we thank all the journalists who want to report on the truth and on what they heard today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this very optimistic note, with the confidence that today's event and the briefing and the press conference will help the cause of the peace, will bring peaceful reconciliation in Syria, will facilitate political process that Russia is actively fostering within Astana process, and other possible steps with the hope of such positive outcome for a peaceful future of Syria. I would like you to report to your offices about the briefing that has taken place, about this press conference. I'm positive that we'll meet again, and as Terabit has said, I would like to highlight his opinion. New surprises await you. Thank you very much.